Hello and welcome to Instant Transmission, a podcast where we discuss everything Dragon Ball, and there are no jokes tonight. Please, if you're listening out there, try not to burn yourselves because these are some hot takes tonight. Dragon Ball Daima is completed. We've got opinions. You've got butts. So sit down and open wide because we're about to explode into our Daima series review. I'm your host, Dayton, and once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Todd.
Hi.
And tonight's episode should be pretty laid back, just like our other review episodes, as we give our opinions on Dragon Ball Daima. If you've seen our other reviews, we'll be attempting to follow roughly the same format. But speaking of that format, would you mind filling us in on how tonight's episode is going to work, Todd?
Absolutely. As a reminder, our scoring goes from 1 to 10. Normally, we would score each arc, but since Daima doesn't have arcs, we'll just be scoring the show as a whole. We will present our individual scores, which we haven't yet revealed to one another, and then come up with the instant transmission score by taking the average of mine and Dayton's individual scores. And we also have a few unique scores that we'll discuss just for fun towards the end of the episode.
Yeah, and just to give everyone just a reminder of everything that happens in Daima, I'm going to briefly go through it, and Daima begins with the introduction of several new characters, which include the Supreme Demon King Goma, his advisor Degasu, and the Elder Namekian Neva. This trio travel to Earth to use the Dragon Balls for nefarious purposes. Shenron is summoned, our heroes are turned into children, and then baby Dende is kidnapped off to the Demon Realm. A pint-sized Goku, Supreme Kai, Piccolo, Vegeta, and Bulma meet up with their new guide to the Demon Realm, the mysterious Glorio, who also appears to be an agent of the plotting Dr. Arinsu. After learning about the Demon Realm's Dragon Balls, our heroes battle their way through the third and second Demon Realm, getting 2 Dragon Balls and eventually making it to the first realm. This is where they have their epic face-off with the Supreme Demon King Goma. Swelling with power from an ancient artifact known as the Evil Third Eye, Goma is nearly able to overcome our heroes, but is struck down thanks to some teamwork and some quick thinking. The Demon Realm's Dragon Balls are used to set everything right, the day is saved, and our heroes return home in their proper adult forms. So, with all that covered, was there anything you needed to add before we jumped into it?
No, we got the summary out of the way. I think we can start talking about Dragon Ball Daima as a whole.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one because we don't have like the bite-sized episodes to break down. It's kind of the whole thing. So I kind of just started from the beginning and went to the end with the parts I liked and disliked, as well as just some overall opinions sprinkled through. And so I got to say, the beginning of the series is so fun. Heading to the Demon Realm is such a cool concept. You could tell that there was so much time and care taken to kind of power everything down and make it more fun, and it really did feel like an adventure at the start of the series. And I got to say, as far as stepping into a new world, I thought they did a great job with this.
I love the beginning of Daima, 100%. Some people I've seen on the internet say that they don't like the first episode because it's mostly a rehash of events from Z, but I even love that part. Like, I think it's a great way, especially for anybody who isn't familiar with the events or even needs a refresher of the events, in addition to the fact that seeing the events in the Buu arc reanimated with fantastic animation just made me hyped to see more of that. And it introduces our main antagonists, so I love the first episode. I love the way it introduces us into the demon world. Yeah, I mean, I have almost no complaints about the beginning of Daima at all.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I had some critiques early on that there were some like info dumps where they would just tell you a bunch of backstory and a bunch of stuff going on. It's not it doesn't hurt the show for me, but it would have been cool seeing that stuff, maybe traveling to where the Glen trees were and actually seeing what was going on. It would have been nice to experience the story rather than being told it. But those are some nitpicks. Overall, I thought it was great. And at the beginning, we also get the power down fights, right? We get Goku using actually like a burger to beat up some people in a bar. He's like doing somersaults and he's got the burger hanging out of his mouth, and it's just a good time. It's very original Dragon Ball feeling. And we also got his fight with the demon police, or the whatever they're called, the Getamine.
Gendarmerie, I think, is the way it's supposed to be pronounced.
they're the demon police. I'm not saying that.
I'm on board.
But that big battle with them where Goku's got the power pole out, and he's jumping off the walls and doing like the parkour from roof to roof. it's a boatload of fun. I love the beginning of this, and the beginning battles were fantastic.
Yes, 100%. I think it's interesting too because almost every episode in the first chunk, gosh, almost up through like episode 8, we get some sort of fight. Even in the very first episode, it's not much of a fight, but we get to see Goku and Vegeta fight in the first episode, and then we get to see the bar fight. Might be in the second episode. It might have been the third, but I think the second one introduces like Glorio. Um, there's lots of fun fights that it kind of like escalates the combat because our heroes are younger. We've got the heavy air in the third demon world, and like you said, Dayton, it kind of makes the fights more like original Dragon Ball. It's a lot of it feels like a lot of good choreography. It's very creative, and it's very well animated. And also, we're given a lot of, as far as the story goes, we're given a lot of mysteries that we as the audience want to know more about. We want to know who Glorio is. We want to know why he was spying on Degasu and Goma. We want to know what his connection is to Dr. Arinsu. We want to know what Dr. Arinsu's plan is, since she's the one who instigated Goma going to Earth and using their Dragon Balls. We want to know who Neva is and why he can just magically make the Dragon Balls usable even when they're on their stone cooldown. There are so many questions that this show sets up in the beginning that I really like. Well, even the bugs too, the resurrect bugs and the revive bugs and the combine or fusion bugs, whatever they call them. So there's just so many things that it sets up that we want to know more about.
Yeah, and even like when Goku goes to order that burger and he asks, oh, what's in it? And it's something unsavory. And Goku doesn't care. He eats it. But I like little details like that where it's like the burgers are weird and gross and probably made out of bugs or unsavory bits of stuff. Like, okay, that's awesome. That's fun. We're somewhere different. And so the meat's different. We went to this magic shop, and rather than having like artifacts that we would have seen in the Dragon Ball universe, we're getting like bugs and eyeballs and all sorts of weird stuff. It's doing a good job of making the world feel familiar, but also very different. I thought this is told very cleverly.
That's a really good point. And the character designs are great. I love the kind of like goofy demons and stuff that Goku fights in the bar. And then little bits and pieces like the plant that they get launched into across the land so that they can travel because the air is heavy and they lose their plane. So yeah, I mean, I think this is going to kind of lead us up into the Tamagami discussion, which I think everybody knows how Dayton and I feel about the Tamagami fight.
Yeah, this is probably top 3 best battles in all of Dragon Ball, visually speaking, fun speaking. Animation quality, there's nothing better than this. This is probably the best animated piece of Dragon Ball I've seen. I really have no bad things to say about this. Even my nitpicks are like, well, there could have been a little bit more martial arts. And even then it's just like, I'm looking for something to complain about. Like I'm digging, I'm trying. This fight is animated so well. I love that this battle is kind of the power levels brought down a little bit, that it's a little bit more planted on the ground. Because I think things are more epic when you see Goku wall running and diving through the air and jumping on top of mountains and like utilizing the terrain. And by the way, the terrain was cool here too. It was like this broken, dilapidated city, like settled in between like this mountainous region. And you see that terrain kind of come into play and be a part of the fight, which is always cool. So this fight, it's probably the cleanest animation to date. It's one of the funnest battles. Even like the finish to it where he hits the Tamagami with the Kamehameha and then flies in for that final deciding blow. It's so epic. Like normally you're used to the Kamehameha winning the battle, but the kind of like sets those expectations aside for just a second and gives you that follow-up, and you're like, cool, yep, that's what I didn't realize I wanted that ending, but I wanted that ending.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. It's easily in my top three favorite fights in all of Dragon Ball. And I mean, it's funny because it doesn't have like the emotional or story weight that like say Cell versus Gohan has, but we've talked about this before where that is almost a non-fight. This is basically the opposite where it is moving the story forward, like it's significant to the story, but there's not a lot of emotional weight. However, it makes up for that so much in terms of choreography, animation, the respect it puts on the Kamehameha, all of it, the whole thing, like Goku getting shoved around by the hammer, them kind of like diving in between the buildings and the plateaus and
And the
stuff.
size difference too, right? It's Goku, this little pint-sized hero, fighting this giant colossus of a demon robot with a giant hammer. And they do stuff like Goku's riding on the hammer as it's coming back to him. So you get to see this kind of size disparity coming into play. It's really cool.
100%. Yeah, I cannot say enough good things about the Tamagami fight in episode 8. It is so good. It is like anybody who hasn't stopped to watch Daima or is like, "Oh, I'm not interested." Watching it just for the Tamagami fight is so worth your time.
Oh yeah, it's a top 3 fight in Dragon Ball for me, and I think it's the best animated fight ever produced for Dragon Ball, at least in my eyes.
I would put it up there. The only one that I think would even be a remote contender for that would be some of the stuff in the Broly movie.
Broly
But
stuff's so good. Also, the Vegeta in the red looks good too, so we didn't
yeah,
get that.
but I would say it would be those two are contenders for like the number one animated fights that I have seen in Dragon Ball period. So the fact that they did that for Daima is props to the animation team.
Unfortunately, though, for me, after this fight, there's kind of this step back that happens. I mean, there's so many cool things that they started putting into play. Like I didn't even really get into Dr. Arinsu's plotting that's been happening up to this point, right? Like you get the little snippets of Glorio kind of watching from the shadows, Goma and Degasu. You also have Glorio kind of calling in and touching base with Dr. Arinsu as they're traveling, right? So he's loyally working for Dr. Arinsu and waiting. Unfortunately, there's never a payoff to this. So it sucks because up to this point, like we've had some good setup for this stuff, and then nothing else will happen. So I'll bring up the good here where I liked what they were setting up. I would have liked it so much more if we got payoff at the end for it, but this feels like a wasted opportunity. I do want to bring it up because I thought they were doing a good job. I just wish that they would have kept going forward with it.
I 100% agree. I mean, even as we were going through this show, I think both of us kept saying like, oh, like for me, I was saying I really like Dr. Arinsu. Like she seems like a really interesting villain. She has, a lot of mystery behind her. She seems very smart. She's not a fighter, so she's a different kind of villain for Dragon Ball, which is not something we see very often. And yeah, as we move deeper into this, we'll talk more about that. But the whole reveal of Glorio and Dr. Rinsu by the end falls very flat. Like it just felt like there's no meat on those bones at all.
And I like the
Which
tenseness that there was as the party traveled, right? Because you always had kind of in the back of your head, like at any moment that play could happen, like something could happen. You're just waiting for it.
yeah, exactly. I mean, we even get the fight with Glorio and Goku like early on, where Glorio's like taunting him like you're not that much stronger than me, and Glorio, or Goku rather, takes Glorio to task on that in a really cool or visually cool fight anyway.
I like the Super Saiyan transformation in that one. I thought it was well done.
I do like that one a lot. And but yeah, I think the running theme as we move forward here, one of the things that I have down in my notes is that characters and their plots are frequently wasted or unsatisfying. I think that's the case with Glorio. I think that's the case with Pansy, who we've pretty much glossed over because she's really not significant in this show. She's basically just there to fix the plane, which also they use the plane crashing or broken way too many times. Uh, I think Dr. Rinsu is kind of wasted. Glorio, Pansy.
The
Um,
bugs,
what's that?
the bugs, like the fusion bugs.
Oh, yeah, don't get me started on the fusion bugs. The fact that those do not like you seed this idea, so the audience the entire time is like, "Oh, there's going to be fusion," and then they don't do anything with them. It could have even been a gag, and I would have been happy if they would have done something with the fusion bugs. I would have been happy.
Yeah, it it's hard not to bring this stuff up right now because up till this point we've gotten a lot of like threads going. There's a lot of different storylines that have been established up to this point, and most of them don't actually pay off, and it's a shame. And it's kind of a compliment to how good the first half of the storytelling of the show was. It's I don't know. I feel like it needed more time to cook or something like that after this point, but once we get through the rest of this, I'll dive into that more. Another thing I noticed too was that after the Tamagami fight, we get an animation quality dip. And this dip lasts for a while too, because we get Vegeta's fight with the second Tamagami, and like the animation quality is fine. Like it's not good, but it's not bad either. It's just what I would say is acceptable quality, which really sucks because it's friggin' Vegeta. It's arguably the second most important character in Dragon Ball at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, our audience certainly knows that I'm a big Vegeta fanboy, so I was super bummed with that fight. After watching the whole series, I feel like really Vegeta's fight is one of the better ones that we get. Funny enough, but compared to what we got with Goku against the Tamagami, it's not even remotely close. Like it has a few moments where the animation is fantastic. Like his Gallic gun looks phenomenal as it like shoots through the water and stuff like that. I really, for me, it's the animation takes a bit of a dip, but it's for me, it's more the choreography that is like, like it feels like they had two completely different fight choreographers working on the Goku Tamagami fight and the Vegeta Tamagami fight because it's just so bland in Vegeta's fight, unfortunately.
And his character
it's
personality too, right? Like it's
yeah,
I one of the best parts about Vegeta is his character. It's what he talks, it's what he says, it's the stuff that comes out of his mouth, and he basically said nothing this entire fight.
yes, yeah, 100%. And it's the reveal of Super Saiyan 3 for Vegeta. So like I want to be excited about it, but it really for me personally, I know a lot of people on the internet were super stoked, but it did not do it for me. I wish they would have done more for Vegeta, and it felt like he was very much an afterthought.
I think if Vegeta gets the same kind of attention and love that Goku's fight had with that Tamagami, if we get that same level of animation for his fight, I think that does so much for the series. To cement it as something that's very rewatchable, that gives you a lot of highs. Because I feel like you get a great beginning, and then we get filler episodes, we get dog butt, we get a subpar Vegeta fight. Um, and we're kind of like touching plot points, but it's very I don't know, it's very rigid. It's like, well, we have to go here and get this, and then we go there and we get that, and then we have to go here and we have to do this. We're MacGuffining like our way to the final battle at this point. And so we're kind of at the bottom of the lull through this area where things kind of fall off for me. I mean, there's also weird moments too where they make it to the third demon realm, and like laser guns from the demon police are like really hurting our main characters and stuff. It feels really weird. There's the moment where Goku gets electrocuted after he touches the light seal with the power pole. That's a weird moment where he's just kind of like knocked out and falling through the air, and everyone just kind of keeps going about their day. It's a lot of weird moments that feel not fully thought out.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree.
Oh, and the
There,
Ginyu Force, not the Ginyu Force, the
oh,
Special Force. I don't even know their names. They don't matter.
because they matter that little. I think they call them like the Gendarmerie Special Forces or something, but they're just like They were truly a waste of time. I think the show cut out the gendarmerie special forces, and the show is much better for it.
I mean, really, for me, like the high points usually involved Hybus. I'm glad he was here for his amazing just character personality. I love that him trading away the evil third eye for a cool hat is so in line with his character. He's always talking about how he needs to get his hair done, he's busy and he doesn't want to get sweaty. I love that character.
Yeah, and Hybus. So funny enough, we talked about the writing for Vegeta not being good in Vegeta's fight. Vegeta's best interactions are with Hybus. Hybus really accentuates like the little bit of interactions that they did with Vegeta, because usually it's Hybus who is. We know Vegeta is strong enough to absolutely destroy Hybus, and yet Hybus continues to antagonize Vegeta, telling him he's egotistical and hitting on Balma.
It's funny because they're both kind of vain characters, and so they're similar personalities, but kind of skewed in a different direction.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. I will say so we're talking about Hybus, and I agree. Hybus is fantastic. In addition to that, I will add, I think the one good plot point in here that I liked, at least most of the way that it was handled, was the evil third eye, because they reveal it to us, the audience, without us necessarily picking up on it. I know, I'm sure plenty of people did, but it's Hybus with his belt with the eye on it, and that doesn't come into play. Like it's revealed fairly early that he has that belt, and then it doesn't come into play until, I don't know, episode 16 out of 20 or something, where they're like, oh, that is the evil third eye. So props to them for that reveal.
It did look like that. Some people had figured it out online, just tangentially from like I saw in some searches, it popped up in the history. I don't go to like Reddit or any of those places, so it's fun for me because I feel like that surprise is ruined if you let like a forum figure it out for you. I think this show is a lot more fun, or actually most shows are more fun if you kind of let yourself kind of figure it out. It's okay to be fooled. Actually, it's more fun to be fooled in this case. So I'm glad that the wool was pulled over my eyes in that one. Also, I'm glad the way that they did it is they showed him have the eye for the belt, and then they really didn't draw too much attention to it after that, right? I think it would have been more obvious to me if, like, every other episode they were like, "Hey, remember that eyeball, huh? Remember that eyeball?" I think I would have started catching on at that point, but no, they just showed it to me and then moved on with their day. Like, "Oh, look at this weird thing he has."
Yes, yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I like it, is because it was very showing his belt was very subtle. Uh, there were a few times where we talked about the third eye, which was good to keep that in our minds as the audience, but it was never in reference to the belt at all until the very end when they reveal that it is the third eye. So I liked that. I wish that Daima had more writing like that, where it's like set up. They're very subtle about giving us breadcrumbs and leading us in the right direction, and then payoff. And we don't get that. Like the bugs are an example. The bugs and the eye are like juxtaposed examples of one way to do setup and payoff really well, and a way that, I mean, there was setup and no payoff at all.
I think we can go into that even more after we get to this final fight here, because we're led up to it. This is where our heroes finally arrive to the final battle. And it's Supreme Demon King Goma juiced up on that third eye. And I have two trains of thought here. I have my brain turned down a bit in how I feel, and my brain left at the normal functioning level in how I feel. So if I turn my brain down a bit and just enjoy the visual spectacle, I think it looks amazing, right? The animation is some of the smoothest I've ever seen in any animation, really. The sense of motion that the artist convey is just like, it's almost impossible what they did in my eyes. I don't know anything about animation, but it's incredible. The key blasts look awesome. The characters' techniques and moves and fluidness is just all on point. There are fun moments in here, especially when everyone's like on the floating pieces of rocks, charging up their special abilities. And we get to see like kind of all their personalities come through when they're firing off those abilities, or say when they're fighting through like the rocks to get to Goma. You see different characters. One of them might be smashing through, whereas the other one's slicing through with his sword, or one's elegantly sliding through. They do a great job of just showing how these characters are characters, and I love that. It's a fun fight. Vegeta's Gallet Gun or Final Flash. I think it's Final Flash.
Final Flash.
It looks just awesome. Especially, and I mentioned this when we reviewed it. I love the way when it goes off into the sky and explodes. You see like the rays of light shooting down through the clouds in like this erratic manner. I love it. It's so awesome. However, if I turn my brain power up, there are a lot of questionable decisions made as far as like plot points. Why the hell did Goku drop the fusion bugs? Right before the battle started. These things were alluded to 15 episodes ago, and then you just drop them. Okay. Why is Vegeta just constantly not very helpful? Like he kind of just gets knocked out of the way, and like, he gets knocked down and asks Goku for a regen bug, and Goku's like, I dropped him. Oh no. And then Vegeta's like, guess I'll pass out. It's like stuff like that. And then we've got the plot holes of Super Saiyan 4 now being here before Dragon Ball Super. So that's weird. And on top of that, Dr. Rinsu really hasn't had much of a plan after putting all these events into motion, and just kind of gets her wish stolen from her. And there's no, like, I guess her wish would have been to be strong enough to be the next Supreme Demon King, and that would have been it. And it's just like, okay, well, that's not very interesting. Also, why did Abra ever take out the evil third eye? I need an explanation for that.
Yeah, we as the audience kind of have to make an assumption that there's some reason, whether it be like the eye corrupts you or whatever, the power is too much. But we have to come up with our own explanation for the evil eye. Dr. Arinsu, like, they kept saying her whole deal was that she wanted to make the demon realm scarier and more powerful, such that it would be a problem for all of the worlds or realms outside.
That's what it was. Yeah, sorry, I misremembered.
No, but your thought, what you said about the wish was correct. She wanted to use the wish to gain power to be the next Demon King. And then as the Demon King, she wanted to make the demon realm a more dangerous place and all that. But that whole concept, that whole idea doesn't jive with the way that she acted at the end of Daima. Glorio wished for Goku and the others to be turned into adults, completely betraying Arinsu, not wishing for her to gain power. And then Arinsu just lets him go. There's no repercussions for him betraying her. She doesn't have Ku and Du attack him. There's nothing. She just says, get out of here, you're fired. And then by the end of it, once we get I think it's Ku as the Supreme Demon Lord with Arinsu as his Vice Demon Lord, everybody is like, yeah, she'll be a good in that position. And it's like, wait, but she was trying to make the demon realm a problem for everybody else, and now she's okay. And I don't know. It doesn't all fit together in a way that makes sense to me.
Yeah, for somebody who is so smart and cunning and plotting and, I don't know, mustache twirling, you figured there'd be some sort of big mastermind play to all of this, but that doesn't really feel like it. And I don't know, Ku and Du aren't my favorite characters either, and so one of them becoming the new I don't know, it's whatever. I don't have any feelings about it really. We also get like info about Supreme Kai's background, like his race and stuff like that, and he's coming from, like, his race comes from these trees, but all the trees are dead, and I guess that'll never be brought up again. I felt weird about that. To me, felt like a loose end that needed to be addressed, where it's just like, yeah, it's very sad. Anyway, like, I needed a little bit of closure on that. I don't know. like I said, if I forget about the plot stuff, right? Like I'm just here to enjoy some fighting and kick assery. I think there's a lot to like about this fight. It is fun. Vegeta also gets in his licks too, which is pretty cool. And uh they try and get the side characters involved, not Piccolo, but the other ones.
Ha ha ha.
So it's a pretty fun fight. It looks beautiful. But as far as like plot points go, they introduced so many problems or just did not have any payoff by the time we get to the end here.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, again, we talked briefly about the earlier characters that were either wasted or their character arcs were unsatisfying. I mean, I'll throw Majin Buu on that list. Where what is Majin like? Why is Majin Buu here? He beats the number one Tamagami, but Goku or Vegeta could have done that. It just doesn't, like, that's the only thing that he does. That's the only there's almost no value to do being in the story. Ku, they do use I mean, he solves the puzzle for the Tamagami, and then of course he defeats Goma, and then they make him the Supreme Demon King. And it's like, okay, I'm not in love with Ku's character, but if you're going for a gag ending, making him the Demon Lord makes, that makes sense as a gag ending. And yeah, as far as his personality and stuff, he was suited for the role, whatever. I'm fine with that. And like, at least it does something with him as a character. But Piccolo does. Why is he here? He does almost nothing. Bulma, the only thing that she does the entire time is the gag bit of getting Vegeta to stop fighting Goma. That's like the only thing Bulma does.
Oh yeah, the side characters got side charactered, and no something with Ku being kind of like the brilliant genius minion. I almost felt like that was a detriment to Dr. Arinsu's character because it made Dr. Arinsu not seem smart or powerful because she had two minions that were better in both of those fields. So I almost wish they would have left the super intelligence to Dr. Arinsu, like that's how she plots and plans or whatever. Or I would have been fine if Ku was super intelligent, but Dr. Arinsu was just like, galaxy brain, even more intelligent sort of thing. So I did have a slight qualm about his quirk because I felt like that should have been Arinsu's, but who knows? That he could have been super intelligent, but because we didn't get like a proper end to the series, her thing could have been she could have been manipulative, right? Like I know how to get the pieces moving. Like, yeah, sure, you know how to read a book, but I know how to manipulate people.
Yeah, I would have been okay with that, but that's, like you're saying, that's not what we got out of Arinsu. Like, it doesn't feel like she was the master manipulator by the end of it. Really, it felt like everything kind of like whatever she tried to do, she lost control of, like with Glorio changing the wish on her and everything. Her Majin Buu whole recreation thing ended completely flat. Yeah, she basically, well, I mean, I guess she's probably satisfied that she's basically like the vice demon king by the end of it, but it, just almost every character that is presented in this show does not get a good character arc. I'm trying to think of, is there one character like Glorio's is it's okay.
It doesn't feel fleshed out enough though, right? And I would have liked if they would have sprinkled some hints or clues of like his impoverished background into his character, right? Where maybe you come across some poor kids or whatever, and he hasn't shown emotion pretty much at all this whole time, but he protects them sort of thing. And now you're like, oh well, why did he care about them? Well, then we learn about that later. It would have been nice.
Yeah, 100%. Or even like I feel like they needed an earlier flashback. I think we talked about this briefly, but an earlier flashback of Arinsu saving Glorio as a kid from the third demon world. We're basically told that in like a single sentence when it's immediately relevant. which is super frustrating. Um, speaking of characters who are wasted, Degasu might have been the worst handled character in this entire show.
I honestly keep forgetting that he's in this show just because he basically was like bossed around for the first few episodes, and then we didn't see him until he tried stealing Dende and leaving, and then gets hit with a hat and put in jail. That's his entire thing. And what was it? He had like a monologue about his desire for power where it just kind of went off the deep end out of nowhere, I might add. Like it felt like they forgot about him. Like, oh shoot, we forgot to keep doing this story. Let's jam it in here real quick and get that wrapped up.
Like the moment that he takes Dende and he's like, I'm betraying Goma because I want to be the supreme demon king. It's like, wait, what? Who are you?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of having like an evil Supreme Kai is actually kind of cool. I'd like to explore that idea and see what's going on with it, but we really didn't explore it. It was just he was kind of a servant and he was kind of pushed around and then he was evil and he went to jail.
Yeah, I think I think out of all the characters, and Piccolo was like pointless in this show, I think Degasu might have been the worst handled character. Like some of them are just they try to ham fist these storylines in there, and it's like, wait, you haven't set that up with us, the audience. Like you haven't given us anything to like drip feed us those details, to give us any sort of like breadcrumbs to kind of follow along. You're just kind of like, bam, here's this information. And it's like, wait, what? Since when?
And man, I know we've talked about it off stream, but I don't know how much we've talked about it on stream. This show feels like it wasn't finished when they started making it. It almost feels like they hit a point where they're out of content and the quality just falls off a cliff. And like the dialogue goes down and the storytelling goes down and everything just kind of diminishes, except for really like the animation quality is pretty decent most of the way through. Pretty decent. Except for that lull right after episode 8. There's definitely a big dip there, but nothing really looks bad. And I mean, part of the thing is even on that side, they're kind of damned by their own success. When we know how good they can make something look, it's really apparent when they're not trying to animate up to that level. Like we've seen episode 8, we've seen episodes, 18 and 19. They look so damn good. And so when something's not done up to that quality, like the Vegeta fight, to me, it sticks out like a sore thumb, at least on the animation side. As far as the storytelling side, after episode 8, it goes downhill. Like you can tell they have some general idea of where things need to end up, but those threads don't really connect. And it feels like a lot of plot points are lost along the way. And I agree with you. Honestly, one of the best things that happened at the end is the gag where after the final credits, we get the scene with them at the souvenir shop where they come across a jar of evil eyes that you could just buy from the shop. It's such a funny little gag that fits in universe. And I love it. I love this kind of humor that fits in universe. And honestly, the jokes that they told in this, like with Hybis and stuff like that, they weren't like Dragon Ball Super where they made me like cringe and want to crawl out of my skin. That the humor was actually kind of on point in Daima.
Yeah, I agree. There are a few parts where it fell off a little bit, but truly that after credits ending, easily the best way this show could have ended. I did not see it coming at all. I was impressed by, the whole scene, the animation, the storytelling.
The animation was weirdly good.
Shockingly good for that sequence. And then it being revealed to us that they have 2 other evil third eyes just being sold in this random store. Like, perfect way to end the show. I wish. So, I mean, we're talking about how good that like tail end of it is, and then how good the first like almost half is, and I just wish it would have kept the quality all the way throughout. Like that was the other thing about the show, is that since we knew it was we were told that it was going to be fairly short, like a limited run show, and we were shown the animation, and even those first 8 episodes, the animation, the choreography, the story, all of it was very, very high quality, very good. And since it was a limited run show, I was hoping and expecting for that quality to remain throughout the entire 20 episodes. And it just does not, unfortunately. Mostly in this, I think the story is the thing that drops off the most out of anything.
It's also weird too when you're going into a limited run like this, and we had a couple basically filler episodes in this show. And when you've only got 20 episodes, it's almost kind of unacceptable, right? This thing should have been plotted out from start to finish. And then we get in and we got all these story points going. When we were watching it, we were like, all right, like there's a lot going on. They're going to have to tie this up or start getting these things moving. And then we get a filler episode or we get a slow moving episode. And it's just like, guys, there's a lot you need to do by the time we get to the end here. And I mean, it was starting to become obvious they weren't going to be able to complete everything that they had started when we got to like episode, I would say 14 or 15, somewhere in there, where it's just like, all right, there's no way for them to complete everything they started in a satisfying way.
Yeah, 100%. To say nothing of I mean, you touched on this briefly, but so we don't get what we thought was going to be the resolution to the climax in Goma getting the third eye. We don't get the fusion, which is kind of where we thought the was going to be the resolution. Instead, we get a new transformation in Super Saiyan 4, or a remake of an old transformation, I guess. But the reveal. So I'll start with the good. The fight in Super Saiyan 4, awesome. The design, pretty good. But the reveal for it was not good, and it doesn't make sense in the continuity with Dragon Ball Super. Like, they showed Neva giving Goku some sort of power or power up. So we as the audience are kind of like, oh, maybe Neva unlocked this power. And Dayton, you had mentioned like it would be cool if they gave Goku a Demon World only transformation. And I agree. If they would have like written it that way, it could have rolled into the super continuity and would not have been an issue. But instead, by the end of it, they tell us Goku says that he's been working on this transformation and he didn't know if it would work or not, which makes it not make any sort of sense with Super.
And man, they even had it kind of set up where they could have done something like making it a Demon Realm only, but the Magite stuff that they had mentioned, they could have taken some of that and been like, oh, well, this will unlock your Demon Realm powers or something like that, or that's why you can use it here. So they could have had a couple storylines kind of merge and have Super Saiyan 4 be in existence, but also not break continuity. And like you brought up, it drove me up a wall that Neva kind of summoned forth the Super Saiyan 4, and then later Goku says that he'd been working on it. And it's like, well, okay, why did it happen that way then? It's very bizarre, but that's part of the last episodes for me, where if I turn my brain up too much, I start thinking, and I can punch a bunch of holes in this, but if I turn it down a little bit and just enjoy the fun of it all, because it is fun, I just don't know how to rate this stuff. I mean, I think there's a couple continuity errors that I can't think of off the top of my head, just because now we have Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta, right? How does that fit in the continuity? And how come we don't really see that after this? We have Super Saiyan 4, same thing with that. So I mean, we've got a couple transformations that are kind of not really accounted for. Is the Broly movie, is that canon or no?
Yes, because it gets brought up in the manga briefly.
Okay, I was wondering if that like broke the timelines at all, because I wasn't sure exactly when it took place. But part of me doesn't really care, because I think Super Saiyan God looks awesome on Vegeta, so I don't care if he has it. Like, that's one of those like kind of rules of cool where I'm just like, you know what, I'll overlook this because I like everything that's happening.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
It's also easier to overlook like one thing versus like this and this and this and this. It's like, okay, well, now we've got a whole can of beans here.
They just start adding up, and you're absolutely right. And truly, the Beerus arc or the Battle of Gods movie, whichever your preference is, they or even in the manga where they cover the Beerus material, uh, that immediately makes these transformations not make sense because the scene where Beerus slaps Bulma, there's no way that Vegeta would not immediately burst into Super Saiyan 3. I think you said it best, Dayton, where it's a moment of explosive rage. Like he's not thinking, like other people have said, oh, Vegeta stopped using Super Saiyan 3 because it's not an efficient transformation. I don't give a shit if it's efficient, and neither would he in that moment. He would do anything he could to make himself more powerful to defeat Beerus in that moment. And he just goes into Super Saiyan 2, and that's it.
Yeah, if he had like a universe-threatening attack he could have used on Beerus at that point, he might have whipped that mofo out. He lost his mind. He was not thinking at that moment. If he had a higher form or a higher gear to flip into, he would have used it there.
100%. And in addition to that, when Beerus fights Goku on King Kai's planet, Beerus says, "Show me your power," effectively. And Goku goes into Super Saiyan 3, and he even says in the dialogue, "This is my most powerful form at this point." And it's like, okay, I mean, we might be able to, as fans, kind of like rationalize that in our minds and be like, well, maybe he can't access Super Saiyan 4 for some reason. But even then, we're not given a reason. Like we've seen him use it. We've seen him use it now in Daima, Super Saiyan 4. So we kind of have to come up with our own reason why he wouldn't use it in that moment. It's just, and then there's, like you said, Dayton, there's even more. There's Kibito and Shin.
That's right. I knew I was missing something.
Kibito and Shin were separated at the beginning of Daima, and at the beginning of Super, they're still in a singular form. So that's just one more piece that does not fit into the continuity puzzle here.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I think it could go a long way if they just come out and say that this isn't canon. This is just a fun adventure, and then it's just like, all right, cool. You can do whatever you want then. Like, I don't care. But when you do come out and say, hey, this is all part of the Dragon Ball storyline, it's like, all right, well, I have to give it some level of scrutiny then. And I'm not even that fickle with Dragon Ball usually. Like, I'll hand wave stuff and, okay, yeah, like, I understand this doesn't make sense, but whatever. Like, it fits better with the story, I guess. So we'll do it that way. There's just these are pretty big plot holes. Like, transformations are a huge deal in Dragon Ball. And you can't just be like, well, he has it here and then he forgets about it later or something. Or if you are going to address it, like, let us know. Because I believe, what was it? Didn't Gohan have trouble getting up into the higher Super Saiyan form or something like that after he had stopped training? Like, he could only go Super Saiyan and not Super Saiyan 2 anymore. I'm trying to remember.
I don't know if it was specifically Super Saiyan 2, but it was more of his ultimate or mystic form. He couldn't reach that form, and he had to train with Piccolo to get into it.
So we know that, like, it is possible to not be able to achieve forms that you have achieved before. And like with Super Saiyan, I believe it was something like, I believe Goku mentioned somewhere, somebody mentioned somewhere where the first time they did it, it was because of out of emotion, and they had to like kind of learn how to go back into it manually, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's really the line that Goku says about, "Oh, I've been working on this transformation," is like the line that ruins this part for me. It's just, they could have easily made it something that he was only able to tap into this one time. It could have been Demon World specific. It could have been Neva unlocking it. There's so many different ways that they could have resolved this, and at least Super Saiyan 4 wouldn't have been a problem.
And the form looks cool. I don't know if you felt this way, but I almost felt like there should have been a little bit more celebration or I don't know, a little bit more bravado with Super Saiyan 4. Like, it just kind of felt like the next power level up, and I didn't get a lot of personality from this form. I don't know if you felt this way. I'm not familiar with GT, so I don't know what it was like in GT, but I almost feel like the different Super Saiyan forms have a little bit of personality or a little bit of quirkiness as to how they act. I know you mentioned that he was kind of doing some of the like monkey running or vaulting and stuff like that. but I almost wish that they would have leaned into that a little harder, like made him like just the way he stand be different, or just like the way he would launch attacks be different. It's a little bit of running variations, kind of neat, but I want some more out of it.
I could see that, and I mean, we were only with the form for a short amount of time, so it was pretty limited exposure to it. They tried. I'll give them that. Like they did the monkey running. They gave him like the big monkey hands for the design, and then there's at least one moment where he uses his newly grown tail for who knows why that grew back. But he uses the tail to kind of like dodge an attack from Goma as he wraps the tail around his arm. So they definitely tried to pepper some flavor in there, but I could see wanting more of that for sure.
Yeah, it was fine. But I think just more would have been better. Like I'm not saying I hated it, but I am saying like it was good, but it could have been great.
That, that is like my feelings on Daima as a whole.
Well, all right. Since we're getting there, you want to give our scores and then just kind of give our reasons why we gave them that score? You ready?
We could do that. Do we want to do the final scores now, or do we want to do the scoring idea that you were talking about first or second?
Ooh, yeah. Let's do my idea first to kind of break it down because I think we've alluded to it pretty heavily where we kind of talked about how there's that break at episode 8, right? Where everything up through episode 8 feels quality, it feels well thought out, well sorted. The character directions feel great. It honestly feels like a different show than all the episodes that follow it. And so we've got these are kind of unofficial, but just more of a mental, I guess, thought process, right? We're just explaining how the show breaks for us. So we're gonna do the first 8 episodes, what we would give that if say that was a series score, and then we're gonna give the following 12 or so episodes a score to kind like as if that was a series, just to see how that would play out. And for me, I think I give the first 8 episodes. I think I give it a man. I said 8.5 out of 10 because I wasn't sure if it was 9 or if it was 8, but it sits right in the middle for me. There's so many things to like about it. Um, like I said, I've got the critique of there's some like little info dumps that I think would have been better if they would have shown them. I would have liked a little bit more emotional establishment. But outside of those two little nitpicks, the animation's great, the fighting's fun, the world building is cool, the demon realms are just like a cool place to go to. And we've got an interesting cast of characters that are going here, right? Glorio's interesting. Dr. Arinsu's very interesting. I like going on an adventure with Supreme Kai and seeing what Piccolo and Vegeta are going to get up to. There's a lot of good things to like about this. And of course, the fight with the Tamagami is one of the best pieces of eye candy in the world. So for me, I give it an 8.5 out of 10 for these first 8 episodes.
Yeah, and I for the first 8 episodes, I'm right up there with you. I was honestly, so I'll say this: I was torn between giving it a 9 or a 10, and a lot of that is that there are very small, minor critiques. I think that so I'll say I think that I would give it a 9, but I would even lean towards like 9.5 and 10. The main things being that there are very small critiques that I have for it. Like they could have shifted some, like you mentioned the exposition dumps. It's funny because I think the small problems that the first 8 episodes have, they are problems that I come to expect from Dragon Ball. And while that doesn't necessarily excuse them, I'm a little bit more lenient with them because I know that they are basically a problem throughout all of Dragon Ball. One of those being exposition dumps. And so I'm pretty lenient when it comes to exposition dumps in Dragon Ball material. But other than that, the only other reason that I would even mark it down to like a 9 rather than a 10 is because it doesn't have the emotional weight or stakes that I really want out of my Dragon Ball. Like Dragon Ball Z hits that stuff really hard and really well. And it's I was hoping that we were going to get that later in Daima. Unfortunately, Daima doesn't have it, period. And that's probably the only reason why I would give the first 8 episodes a 9 instead of just a flat out 10, because the fights are incredible, the world is incredible, or at least it's fun to explore. And we haven't hit like the either bad animation, or we're sitting in that spot of like all of these plot lines have potential and there's mystery.
It's like the
So
honeymoon period.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's I'm giving it a 9, but it is like very close to a perfect 10 out of 10 for those first 8 episodes.
Yeah, they're fantastic. They're fun. And I mean, part of me wonders if like I can't. There's only so much I can disconnect like the plot points they were getting going with the payoff, because how well you get a plot point rolling is also it's judged by how what the payoff is, right? Like, what are
Right.
you hiding from me, and what did you let me know versus what did I need to know? Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to fully disconnect the payoff to all this stuff. So maybe that's why I judged it a little bit more harshly than you. But I mean, an 8.5 is not a harsh rating at all. That is fantastic. Would recommend. If you've seen bad reviews or anything, you haven't checked out Daima, if you got the time to watch the first 8 episodes, highly recommend it. It's so fun. It kind of falls off after that, but those first 8 episodes you got to check out.
So good. Uh
Speaking of the following episodes, so we've got 12 episodes that happen after episode 8, and oh, I'll tell you right now, the final battle lifts this up for me, because without it, it would probably be abysmal. I gave the following 12 episodes a 4 out of 10 because the for me, we have pacing issues, we have filler episodes, we have letdowns, wasted potential, and then we get to the final fight. And even then, like, it gets all the marks on just visuals and fun, but it misses all the marks on payoff and plot. And so, like, you kind of have to have both when you're wrapping up a series. You can't just be like, all right, well, screw all the story we were doing. Let's have a fight. It's like, well, no, you can just have a fight in the middle of a show, but you kind of got to wrap things up when you're getting to the end. And it kind of failed to do most of that. And the stuff it did do, a lot of it didn't feel significant for me. So I gave the following 12 episodes a 4 out of 10.
I gave it the exact same thing. I was really curious to hear what you were going to give the last 12 episodes. I was like, am I being too harsh? But truly, the only thing that holds up those, like, the only reason I didn't give it less than a 4 is for those last 3 episodes, because the visual spectacle that is those last 3 episodes is absolutely incredible, including, or in addition to like we already mentioned, the after credits scene and the comedy and stuff. Those are the only things that are holding it up at a 4 instead of a 1, 2, or 3. Whereas everything else, like the animation quality, takes a big dip for Daima. The fight choreography is, in anything other than those, well, actually, really, even those last 3 episodes, they are fun to watch, but the fight choreography is not, I will say, is not even nearly as good as the fight choreography in the Tamagami fight.
No, I mean, just the Tamagami fight. I get that we used the terrain kind of in the fight with Goma, but the way it was used in the Tamagami fight felt creative and fun. Like the parkouring around and wall running and stuff was so cool.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. Like I'll say those last 3 episodes feel like a good modern day interpretation of like a fight for Dragon Ball, because even like the Broly fight is more stuff like, well, no, I'll say the Broly fight has more interesting stuff with the terrain, truly. So yeah, I like it's those last 3 episodes are good for the visual spectacle, but that's it. That's all those last 12 episodes have. And a little bit of comedy and, you know, the animation. I really don't have a lot else good to say about the last 12, unfortunately. I wish I did.
Yeah, and I'm gonna jump into my rating because it actually works out where you just average those two together. So for me, I give the entire Dragon Ball Daima series a 6 out of 10. I felt like, man, I felt like the beginning was really brought down by like the middle end. And so you have this just incredible, awesome highs, but you also have this like cavern of disappointment. And for me, it just doesn't overcome it. It kind of, I don't know, balances out to kind of a middling series where it's incomplete ideas. I mean, the animators did just a knockout job. So if there's one group of people I can't critique with really anything they did, it's the animation team. And you can tell that they were rushed in some stuff and they did their best. And even the stuff that doesn't look good, it's not Dragon Ball super bad. It's not, you don't have these awkward scenes and frames and where stuff just doesn't look right and characters don't look like themselves half the time. So by like Dragon Ball standards, even the badly animated stuff still actually looks pretty decent. But just the story didn't pay off. There's plot holes. You now have problems with the timeline because of Daima, so it actually has kind of a negative impact on the Dragon Ball universe because there's some big questions that need to be answered now, and questions that didn't need to be there. But yeah, 6 out of 10 still good. It's still slightly above average for me, just because there are just some fun points. I think it's worth watching. It's also a shorter series, so I can rate it a little bit more kindly in that regard. Where if I sit around and watch the very original Dragon Ball Z series, it probably doesn't get a great score because there's probably 100 episodes of fillery type stuff and pacing issues that would drive me up a wall nowadays. But in a 20 episode format, I can survive through a couple of fillers, even though I will critique them heavily.
Yeah. You and I were very much on the same page about Daima, it feels like, Dayton, because I also gave Daima as a whole a 6 out of 10.
Yeah. And I don't know if you were like me, but I held out for so long, kind of they're gonna catch up here, and it's gonna it's not gonna, have the pacing issue, and it's gonna get better. Like I feel like you were in the same boat as me, where we kept waiting for it to kind of turn the ship around.
100%. Like I mean, like we said, I liked your idea of doing those episode breakdowns for the scoring because I love the first 8 episodes. Like I said, almost a solid 10 out of 10 for me. So I was stoked watching Daima, and it just it fell off. And you and I both said, we were like, well, that was like the peak of the mountain. Sometimes the animation and stuff will trail off in anime so that they can kind of save up for the next big thing. And we just kept waiting and waiting and waiting.
And I think every time we were just like, man, they said they're only doing 20 episodes. Oh God, there's not a whole lot of time. Like you felt the walls kind of closing in as you're going through the show.
Yes, absolutely. And admittedly, they picked it up in those last 3 episodes for sure, but it wasn't enough to there was already too much of a disparity, like you said, like the cavern of just this big lull in story and animation, in fight choreography, just everything was, we just had like a handful of episodes where it was just not good for a while.
And I feel like a lot of this stuff was just from them not having the full story written out, like them not being ready to actually produce Daima. I know you had mentioned before that there's actually a lead up to it where they had started working on stuff and they were getting things in place, and like I feel like the stuff that they had lead up to work on, or the stuff they worked on while they were leading up to getting Daima out the door, you can tell that it was well thought through and they had everything that they needed. But it falls off. They don't have like all the storylines in place, so they don't know how to write it, and you can tell like they're trying to buy time to figure out where the episodes are going to go. And this is the first time we've seen stuff like this. This has happened in other anime. This has happened in Dragon Ball previously, like Super, where they're just buying time because the manga isn't out yet, so they don't know what to actually put in the show. I almost want them to be like, all right, let's start working on this like way ahead of time as far as just writing it out. Like, let's not animate anything. Let's just get like the storyboards together and get everything into place so that way we can just start animating and don't have to think about anything else.
I agree. I mean, and Daima had a much better production schedule than like Super, for instance, and you can tell in the animation for sure. But there's even been interviews now from some of the creators at Toei who were basically like, yeah, we started working on the animation and we started the animation before the story was finished. And I'm like, wait, you did what? Like, you can tell that you clearly did not have the story finished, because the story is not coherent and there's no payoff for many of the plot lines, unfortunately. Um, and yeah, it's just super frustrating because they gave themselves a lot more time. The quality in terms of animation is largely fantastic. Like you said, even the lows in Daima don't even come close to the lows in, I mean, especially Super, but even Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z. Um, so it's so frustrating to see a Dragon Ball production that could have been incredible, like easy 9 or 10 out of 10, and it just falls flat in so many ways. It's so frustrating to me.
And I've had some similar critiques with Kai, because it felt like it feels like such a softball for me to be like, all right, take Dragon Ball Z, reanimate it, and clean it up. Everything's there. You have all the story, all the battles, all the dialogue, everything's there. Just clean it up and give us modern animation, and everyone will watch it and buy it. Like, you're just printing money at that point. And I don't know why that hasn't happened. I don't know why Kai was the route they took. Not that Kai's bad or anything, but God, I just want to see the Goku and Vegeta fight in the Saiyan saga animated at the same quality that we saw the Tamagami fight at. Like, everyone would love that. Same thing with Goku's fight with Frieza. And I mean, shoot, we can even go into the androids and Cell and that. Like, uh, just bring that stuff up to modern, like, animation quality, and I think people eat that stuff up. Everyone buys that. Everyone who's a Dragon Ball fan watches that. You're printing money at that point.
I mean, Dragon Ball fans span literally 3 or 4 generations at this point. Like, yeah, if they decided to reanimate Dragon Ball Z, it is, as you said, just printing money. It would be insane.
I mean,
Of
shoot,
course,
do the Battle of the Gods movie. Do that format. I'll take that, where we get the Saiyan saga, or that first arc as a movie, and then we get Frieza as a movie, and then we get Cell as a movie, and it's all just animated to that level I know it can be animated at, because I mean, that's what I want. Part of it too is just I have like my little kid memories of when I saw this stuff on TV, and sometimes it builds it out to be bigger than it actually is. And I don't mind. It's still great when I rewatch it, but my head just imagines it as something universally just way bigger than it could probably ever actually be.
yeah. I mean, I know exactly what you mean by that. The nostalgia and everything, and just growing up with Dragon Ball. I think one other thing that I'll mention for Daima too, as we're kind of getting to the tail end of our talk about it, there was another interview that some of the creators mentioned that Daima was actually supposed to be like, it was loosely based on GT. They wanted to do GT but better, and their goal was to make a finite series of Dragon Ball that adults who had watched Dragon Ball as a kid could watch with their children, which I like that. I like the idea. But it like it doesn't have the same tension and stakes and drama and frankly violence that Dragon Ball Z had, that I grew up as a kid. Like, those are the reasons why I loved Dragon Ball Z so much. And it kind of like stripped all of those away, watered it down, and then didn't deliver on most of the story in the world that it tried to create and present. And so it doesn't feel like they delivered on what they were trying to do. I'm okay with what the idea behind it was. I just wish they would have spent more time polishing it.
Yeah, and I don't know. So I think kids are a little bit better at digesting more adult content than people realize.
Yeah.
And I say this as somebody who played like very, very complicated games when I was like single digit, right? Like tabletop war games and stuff like that. Um, Dragon Ball Z first premiered on Toonami on August 31st, 1998. So I was 8 years old when I was watching Dragon Ball Z. And I mean, there are definitely adult themes in that, definitely. But they're packaged in a way where I don't think they're too much for like a young adult to handle. And I don't think people should shy away from that stuff too much because I think kids can handle that stuff. It also I think taught me some very valuable lessons as like a young kid, like how to work hard and consequences and like I don't know. I have a lot to thank for Dragon Ball. And I think if they would have just leaned into the things that made Dragon Ball great, which is kind of that growing up journey that we see Goku go through where he's a kid but he's dealing with like adult things, right? He's stepping into the world of an adult. I think that's fine. And honestly, I mean, the original Dragon Ball had a lot of adult themes as well as we go back and take a look at that. And so I think it's fine making something that you could share with your kids, but don't worry too much about making it too kid friendly. Make it something that has universal properties that are true whether you're a kid or an adult.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I When I was a kid watching Dragon Ball, one of the reasons I was drawn to it was because it was unlike any of the other cartoons on TV. So I could appreciate the animation, but also appreciate this adult themed drama that was unfolding. And even the I don't think that the violence in Dragon Ball Z is too much for a child to handle. It's still a cartoon. It's still animated. It's presented in a way that is, perfectly acceptable for a child, in my opinion. Um,
I mean, I will say watching Gohan get his neck snapped kind of still haunts me a little bit to this day, but the rest of it I think is perfectly fine.
yeah, I mean, maybe don't snap any kids' necks in Daima, but it's an easy line not to cross, I suppose.
Yeah, you can have adult themes in your family show. It's fine. Just Dragon Ball is not really known for gratuitous gore or anything like that. There's not really
Yeah.
anything that I would consider too kid inappropriate in Dragon Ball in general, all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I feel like they went a little bit too far in that direction. I think really though the real issue is what we've kind of already talked about at length is the story falling flat, the all of the threads kind of being left loose or not being resolved in a satisfying manner, and then having filler episodes and animation quality and fight quality just big dip in the middle. Um,
It's wasted potential. Like that's the big
it
thing
is.
is that I mean, I think it was pretty obvious to see everything that they had like set up in this at the beginning and how great everything looked and how fun it was. There's so much going for it at the start and then to see it you know, kind of peter out. It's really disappointing because we know that this could have been something really really great and it's kind of disappointing the way it ended up.
Yeah. I had to go back and look at. We were talking briefly about this off recording, but I had to go back and look at what I've rated some of the other series. Uh, it looked like I gave Super a 5 out of 10. So I will say I stand by. I still think Daima's better than Super.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. At bare minimum, there are more filler episodes in Super than there are episodes in Daima.
Oh God, you're right.
Roughly speaking, anyway.
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. So yeah, there's that. If anybody watched Super and they enjoyed Super, I think Daima's better.
If you watch Super, watch the damn movies. They're so much better.
Oh God, yeah. I will not watch the Beerus or the Golden Frieza arc in Super probably ever again. If I'm gonna watch them, I'll watch the movies.
That's true. Movies are great. Make them fun.
But I don't think I really have much else to say about this. I guess I'll give the quick rundown of our scores for Daima because, well, we gave I think Dayton's score for all of Daima was a 6 out of 10. My score, Todd's score for Daima was a 6 out of 10, which makes the instant transmission score for Daima a 6 out of 10. So it's a solid 666 for Mr. Satan. But I don't think we have a whole lot more here. Was there anything else you wanted to discuss about Daima in our review for the series as a whole, Dayton?
No, I think I mean, yeah, this was episode 68, so I feel like we got something special coming down the pipe, don't we?
We might, but first, don't forget we're on Patreon and Discord. If you want to grant our wish to turn into adults, you can find us at patreon.com/ITDBpodcast. The Discord link will be in the episode description, but you can also find it in all our other links at linktree/ITDBpodcast. Thank you all so much for your support. And as Dayton said, be sure to join us next time for episode 69 because it's going to be nice.
Nice.
Dayton and I will be collecting Dragon Ball characters, slapping them on a tier list, and rating who would be the best date in what we're calling our Rate the Date special. Will Gohan's kind personality make him a Z-tier date? Or will he get outshined by Best Dad Piccolo? Or will Broly come in to sweep the list with his maximum masculinity? Find out next time. And to all our fellow Dragon Ball fans, stay safe out there and remember to keep rocking the dragon.
You know, and I still didn't even bring up how they ruined frickin' Bibbidi. God damn this show.